Well, I'll start again. So today we will have a short session. Javier will be off today also because he is presenting on .NET Conf in the afternoon. So they are getting ready for that. So we will have a short session because with that and the problems that we were having with Zoom, we will not have enough time. So anyway, I'll wait 1 more minute and I will start with the demos for today. And well, oh, someone else is coming. Okay, I think that everyone must be in already, so we can start. So let me close all of this. And as I said, today we're going to have like a short session because of the .NET Conf in general. Well, okay, so let's start with the first demo. Basically, the demo is for a new tool that we are developing. So the name of the tool so far is .NET Control Panel. The idea behind this is to basically streamline the process of deploying any .NET application into Linux. So basically, the features that we want to present are we want to streamline the process. We want to provide a web user interface um, for the programmers to create basically the websites and virtual hostings. This tool will work with Apache and Nginx, so you don't have to do the setup manually. It will monitor the state of the .NET app. So if you have read the articles about how to deploy a Blazor application or a ASP.NET Core application into Linux, you'll see that there are a lot of steps. And actually, you need to create services in the OS, edit a few files to make it run. So basically, this application will handle all of that for you. Also, again, going back to the same idea of the documentation, if you have read it, you will understand that you also need to create a reverse proxy from a real server. So in general, you need to forward the communication from a real server like Apache or Nginx to the embed Kestrel server. So that's one of the tasks. And in the end, we want to also handle the database administration tasks like creating a database, deleting, like when you're deploying a SAF application, you might need to drop the database if you're going to run the updater and so on and so forth, right? So this is what we want to provide. Basically, this is the layout of how the server will look like. So here we have basically an Ubuntu server. And in this case, we will use Ubuntu for the demo, but we plan to release for many Linux distributions. So this is how it goes. So we have the server. This is the physical machine. And basically, in a physical machine, you can have several network interfaces. So in this case, we have like 3 different network interfaces with different IPs, right? So the .NET Control Panel will allow you to basically create a web server that is going to get attached to these network interfaces. And then within that web server, you can host .NET processes. For example, here, you know that every time that you deploy a Blazor application, it starts on port 5000. And so that's what we're doing in here. So these are 3 different applications running on this Apache. Then another 3 different applications running on a different instance of Apache because it's in a different network address, and also the last one. And for example, here I made a mistake because I wanted to show that one of these or any of these can be an Nginx also. and the 3 databases that we're going to support for the database creation and that administrative task are, in this case, MySQL, because that it's really integrated with Linux, so it's really easy to present that interface, and Postgres also as well. And then the last one that we're going to support, but I think it's going to be our main one in the end, is the Microsoft SQL Server. So in that sense, we will have you cover as a .NET programmer in general. So you don't have to go and do everything in the command line. So, well, that's it for the presentation. And basically, these are the steps that you will need to run in your server in order to set up the .NET control panel. So basically, you download the script. That's step number 1. Then you change permissions to make it executable, and then you run the script. So I will do those steps so you can see how it abstracts everything from you in general. So let's escape here. And in this, let's see. Basically here in this console, I'm connected to a Linux server. If you notice my taskbar, at the moment I'm running in an Ubuntu machine. So this Windows machine is in a virtual machine also. So basically I'm running several servers at a time. That's why I moved to Linux again. And I wanted to show you the steps. So these are really simple. So we already download the file. So we have it here. So there is the installer script. So you just run the command. So installer. And of course, you will need administrative permissions. So what the script is doing right now is basically downloading Apache. It can be in NGINX also. And download the .NET control panel tool and run it for you. So after you finish that, it will set up the firewall so you can connect to the application, and then will handle the binding of the IP address. So now it's running. This is running in a Linux server, but I will run one that I set up before. So you can take a look to it, and let me stop this and run this again. And let's wait a little bit, the demo effect, right? It takes time when you're showing it to someone. And okay, let's log in. So basically, after this 3 command that I show you in the PowerPoint, you don't need to do anything in the command line, unless of course you want it. So this is how the application is split right now. As you can see, it's like basically a new SAF Blazor application. We have not done too much.
Listening on this monthly meeting.
But hi guys, sorry that I cut you off, everyone. But if you can mute yourself, will be good, because I cannot see the participants while I'm showing the virtual machine. So please do that. So okay, so here we have the .NET control panel. So basically, you can have web servers. In this case, I have 2 web servers, as I show in the diagram. I can have as many as I need, as long as I have IP addresses to bound it. Then here we have the network interfaces. Like one network interface, which is a card, can have more than 1 IP. So from here is where we grab the IPs to make the configurations in the web servers. And here we have an NGINX and Apache web server. And after that, you have the apps, right? So this is the neat part. So here you have, you set up the domain for the app, you set up the name, and you tell it on which web server you wanted to run it. So you can even switch from, maybe you're running your application in NGINX and then you're moving into Apache, or you can switch between different installations. Because as you can see here below, you have releases. So you can basically tell, like, okay, I want this release to run at the moment, or if not, you want this release to run. So it helps you to switch applications in runtime. And basically, that's what we have so far. We have a roadmap for this, and this is what we want to achieve in general. It's like we want to add all the supported databases, so you can create users, delete databases, and so on and so forth. Right now, we are only supporting Apache at the moment. I know that Nginx is like the way more modern approach, but here in the office, we have a huge expertise in Apache. We've been using it for 20 years. So that's why we decided to start with Apache and not with Nginx. Then the network interface management, right now we're only handling one IP per interface, and we will include the multi-IP handling for the interfaces. Then what we have for the application, that this is already working, is the first part that is working, is we have deployment slots. That's what I showed you before, that basically the releases where you can switch between one release and the other. Then you can manage the domain names and publish one application in several domain names. That's also some trick that is really neat. You can handle the database for the application, so you can delete it, drop it, and so on and so forth, right? Even doing a backup in some cases. And this is another thing that that we have the code, but we don't have the UI for it. Is that we will include the .NET performance counters per application and per runtime. So that means that you can watch all the applications that are running in a runtime. For example, you can say, like, I want to watch the performance of all the applications running in Net 5 or the applications running in Net 6. Or you can tell, like, a specific application, I want to measure my ERP, and I want to see how much memory is using, how much CPU is consuming. And basically, what we're doing in here is we're showing the performance content that .NET put into the operative system. So in this case, in the Linux server. And also, last but not least, we want to add an Ftp service so you can deploy from the studio. And also the last part, which is basically is more like an information and graphical representation of the health of the server. So we wanted to show you a dashboard, like how much memory are you using, how much CPU, who is using that CPU, and the process that are running. Because at some moment you might need to kill your .NET application to basically reset that. So you will see all of that here. I will continue posting videos about the .NET control panel, because after those 3 lines, it basically streamlined the deployment of a .NET application in a Linux server. So if you have ever used cPanel or WebMin or VirtualMin, it's basically the same idea. So, well, that's everything for the .NET control panel. It was a pretty small demo. We have an instance running already, but we need to polish the UI a little bit and the functionality, because everything is like running on the, like, in an API level. So let's stop this and let's go to our second demo from today. Just let me close all the studios here and all the consoles that I don't need. Well, the subject of today is basically entity framework, right? So what we need to, we had a few demos prepared for you, like getting started with entity framework and so on and so forth. But since we run into an emergency, the only demo that I'm going to present regarding entity framework is the new version of the Sync framework. So just give me a minute to go to the repository. Okay, so if you haven't followed the posts on my blogs and in the group, basically we are releasing the Sync framework as an open source framework, but this only includes the core and the entity framework part. So it means that this is the official repository. So if we go and check the source, basically we reduce the infrastructure needed for the Sync framework for the general version that now is shared between XPO and Entity Framework. So this project became open source, basically. The implementation for XPO is still closed source and is commercial, but the core and the Entity Framework implementation is open source and free to use. So basically, we're aiming everything to go to .NET 5 and 6. Actually, I think we're going to skip .NET 5. We're only going to do the test releases there and then move to .NET 6, which is the long-term support version of the framework. Well, if you want to take a look to the Sync framework, you can go to this URL and download it. You have to take a look to the test. There is one really interesting test. So this is for the infrastructure, and this one is for the Entity Framework project. So if you go to this file, you will see that in here we're synchronizing SQL Server with SQLite, Postgres, and MySQL all at the same time. So it's kind of a crazy demo. You just have to replace the connection strings, and then here is the main test method. So you will see the flow that each one is creating data, then is synchronizing the data, pulling and pushing, and then we check the count if everything went well. This is how you will use the Sync framework for Entity Framework in a console application, in a Blazor application, or in any traditional development case. But we are XAFers, right? So we want to use it in XAF. So for that, I have this small demo here. And what I did is it's the same source. I have it open in two different studios because each one is going to represent a different node in the network. So why we're doing it like this time? Well, there are a few things that happen with .NET 5. First, .NET 5 doesn't run in Xamarin. So for this example, it's impossible to show a Xamarin application as a mobile client. For .NET 6, we will include support for MAUI. But for this version, this will basically not run in Xamarin because of the incompatibilities of the framework. Xamarin at this current moment before MAUI is a different implementation. So this Sync framework will not work. The only thing, that's why we will show in this case a synchronization scenario with two XAF applications in general. So let's run one. So let's run the master node. So what this is going to run is like we're going to run the Blazor application, and we're going to run the Sync server. We're modernizing the code of everything that we are doing. So I don't know if you have following the news about .NET 6 and C#10. Basically, there are new type of projects which reduce a lot of the boilerplate code. So for example, the Sync server now is using the minimal API approach. So here you have one class, which is the controller, which actually you can reduce more. We will maybe reduce it in the future. And these lines from these 15 lines from line 5 to line 20 are the only thing that you need to run the synchronization server. So the code is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. This will end up being a one-liner. So we're happy for that. So let's go to maintain, less things to mess or get confused about. So let's run this. So this will run a XAF application. Let me show you. This XAF application is using Entity Framework. So here we have a DB context, the DB context that we're using. So let me collapse all of this. This, what you're seeing here is the initializer. So you need these classes for the design time experience to open the modelator, for example. So This is exactly the same DB context that the file new project created for me. So I did a new SAF-based application, and I selected Entity Framework as my ORM. And actually, I will do that right now, so you can see the steps. So creating a project. So new. Okay, so here what we're going to do is we're going to select the net core version. Just run the wizard. And let's select both desktop and web. In this case, it's going to be Blazor, and I'm not going to select the API at the moment. For the ORM, we're going to select Entity Framework, and we're going to include the security. So next, here we have the modules that are available for Entity Framework. So as you can see, are most of them actually, but these I will not include. They are not necessary for the demo. So let's wait for this to finish. I don't know why, the demo effect is slow today. And in the meantime, let me show you the other application. Okay, so let's check the other application when it's done. So I will show you here. Basically, XAF creates a DB context for you, and it attaches the basic entities needed. For example, the module info, the model difference, the security. And after that, for example, this DB set that is called persons, I added myself. So you will see, let's see here. When you start, you go to the module, and then you will have your context. So basically, every time that you define a domain object, you need to come here and add a new DB set. So as you can see, the context is almost the same as in the other application. The only change that I had to do in order to include the sync framework in a SAF application basically are these. In the module, you need to add some references. So in here, we're adding references to all these projects. You just need basically one, which is the sync framework, but all of the other ones are different support for different databases engines. For example, Postgres, MySQL, SQL Server, and SQLite. Those are the supported ones at the moment. And beside that, you just need to change the base, because if you can see the file new application, your context inherits from DB context, and in this other case, we're inheriting from sync framework DB context. But if we go to definition here, you will see that it's inherited from DB context. So basically, it's an abstraction, so we can provide all the services for you that you need for the synchronization. So that's why you only have to switch the base in general. Okay, so and beside that, you need to provide a different constructor. So here we have the different constructor, and just register a service, because as you can see, the original constructor only asks for one parameter, and this asks for two. So basically, you need to register this container in the startup, and after that, you're ready to go. Let me show you the registration. So let's go to the startup. And here, this line. basically in this line, we are just registering this my container class, and that class exposes an service collection that we are creating. So here we're telling it, okay, this is the new service collection for the Sync framework. We want to add support for these databases. So we have support for all of them, the official ones for Entity Framework 5. And then we add the synchronization frameworks. And after that, we tell it, okay, I want to store the deltas in this database. So in this case, I'm not creating a database, I'm using a memory database. So I don't create anything for the deltas, they are stored in memory. And the URL of the server and the identity, the same idea of the Sync framework for XPO. And then you return that service collection and you're good to go. So that's the only setup that you need is this method, changing the base of the DB context and adding the new constructor. After that, you're good to go. And regarding the synchronization code is incredibly simple. It's 2 lines or 1 line, depending how you see it. So let me show you the synchronization code. So if we are here in a controller, you will see that I created 3 actions. I have an action for push, an action for pull, and an action for purge, which is basically deleting the deltas in the delta store. So let's see how we pull information from the server. Is just 1 line. The only thing that you need to get is like you need to get one of the reference of the context of the DB context, and then that will expose the pull method. And the same goes for push. So you need to get the DB context from somewhere, like we did it in here with these 2 lines, and then you just push. So this line and this line are the only ones that you basically need for the all synchronization. So let's run this and let's see. Is this okay? It's multiple startup. Good. So this is the master application. So I will run also the node A, because I have it in 2 different studios here. So I close this one here and go here and run this one. And okay, let's see. Let's wait a little bit for this to finish loading. So this is the Sync server, the minimal API that I show you. So if we go to the Sync controller, we can see that, okay, well, this is working. So far so good, right? So and then we have the other 2 applications running. So let's log in. And I will log in into the other one also. Okay, so let's wait for both applications to finish. Okay, so basically, if we go to the persons table, that is the only one that we have at the moment. In both cases is empty, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to purge the changes, the deltas in both databases for one reason. I finished this demo this morning because we were having a problem with the integration of our services into the XAF application. So I didn't have the time to add the filter feature here. So let's delete everything that is already in the deltas. That's done in both databases, and let's start creating data, right? So we'll create here. This will be person 1, save. In this one, we will create person 2 and save it. So if we go to the list, we have person 1 and person 2 here. So this will push. And now you'll see that it's stopping in the push method. And I will just remove this. I don't want to stop all the time. So far, so good. That was what we need to push. So in this case, let's pull in the other client. And if we refresh, here we have the information. This record was created in a different database and in a different instance of the application. And now let's push from this one. And this can pull. And let's refresh. And we will have both persons. So as you can see, it works exactly the same as the Sync framework for XPO. We have the same 3 operations implemented: push, pull, sync, and it's 4 operations in the end, and purge, that if you want to just start from scratch. And as I told you, like right now, basically we're trying to decide which parts we want to expose as an open source. So the version for Entity Framework is full open source and totally free to use. We will publish the nuggets this week. That was scheduled for last week, but between the release of .NET 6, Visual Studio 2022, and the .NET Conf today, basically we've been running out of time here in the office. So, well, that's everything for the presentation for today. I don't know if there is any question about it, or if anyone wants to share some experience with Entity Framework. So if you have any experience, you want to comment anything about the Sync framework for Entity Framework, feel free to use the chat. Well, it looks like everyone is really quiet today. So maybe it's because the subject is Entity Framework, but of course, we love XPO. Is always or prefer tool in general, but Entity Framework, it has changed a lot. Now the new version is, I would say, is really nice. It's a different architecture than XPO. Is the main difference right now is that the architecture from XPO, it looks like kind of dated, right? Like it was started like 15, 16 years ago, or even more, I think. But the Entity Framework core, the architecture is really modern. You can basically replace everything, every little piece with dependency injection. So this was a really fun project to do. And of course, as I told you, our main tool is XPO, but we will include from now on everything for both engines, XPO and Entity Framework. And Entity Framework 5 and 6, which is the current version. Like basically everyone should move to Entity Framework 6 if you're in 5 already, or if you're in one of the old versions for Net Framework. Those are kind of really different. Well, yeah, that's a part of the things with Entity Framework, right? Like the migrations. That flow, I kind of don't like it, because you need to, if you're using XAF, you either need to drop the database or just generate the scripts and run it yourself. I'm so spoiled with the the way that how XPO handles the migration. So that's basically one of the things that used to prevent me to move to Entity Framework. Let's see. Well, it looks like some of the suffers here are using entity framework. So basically, for if you're a all XPO user, of course you will not move to entity framework. But the thing that I want to highlight in here is that if you are as a software company offers both flavors, then your possibilities of getting a new project or basically developing a UI for something that is existing is higher, right? The main problem that most of the applications that you will find in Entity Framework are not Entity Framework Core, Entity Framework 5, 6. There will be the OR version of Entity Framework, and that, of course, will not run in Blazor because it's net 4. And the design pattern is really, really different. So basically, you can forget about using these to provide UIs for legacy applications because this technology is so new that basically there are no legacy applications around. But if you're going to compete for a project where the people prefer to use entity framework, then you will have an opportunity, of course. And that means that you can double the market. That's why we decided also to go with Entity Framework Core, because there are a lot of people who actually use Entity Framework Core, and they want to use XAF, but they think that is something like a second-class citizen in XAF, and it's not. It's also a first-class citizen as XPO is. So we're trying to promote it more to try to get make more content for it. That's why we decided to make to open source the Syn framework, at least the core of the Syn framework, and then release the Syn framework for Entity Framework also free of charge and open source, so everyone can fix something, for example. And big part of the framework will be shared, so the code will be really simple. It doesn't. Once you are into XAF, the next step for us is to make it totally transparent for the programmer. So if you're in XAF and you're using Syn framework, you don't even need to cast like I did today. That I need to get the DB context. You will get the object space, and from the object space you can push, pull, or purge. So the same will go for Syn framework for XPO, that you will use the object space. So that means that your code will not change at all between the synchronization of an entity framework application or an XPO application. Well, it looks like there are no questions on the chat. And well, we're almost out of time because today's was going to be only 1 hour. Everyone, sorry for the inconvenience. Today we had problems with Zoom, and also Javier is out for the .NET Conf. So I think we will repeat this subject either in the middle of the month or before December, so we don't use 2 times the same subject. So please keep an eye on the group. We will let you know when we will show the other part of this meetup, because we had other demos prepared, but I'm the only one here today. Again, thanks everyone for coming, and just as I said, keep an eye on the group, and we will reschedule the other part of this meetup. So, well, that's it. Everyone have a great weekend, and see you on the next one.